The burning truth. The scar on Alara Thornwood's wrist had been dormant for 23 years, until tonight. She pressed her palm against the ancient marking, feeling heat bloom beneath her skin like a match struck in darkness. Around her, the lunar gala glittered with impossible opulence. Crystal chandeliers refracted moonlight into 1,000 dancing stars. Werewolf nobility draped themselves in silk and arrogance, and somewhere in this gilded cage, the Alpha King himself held court. Alara shouldn't have been here. Omegas without pack affiliation weren't invited to royal gatherings, but desperation made thieves of honest people. The apothecary bill for her younger brother's medication wouldn't pay itself, and the Thornwood name, once respected, now meant nothing in a society that measured worth in bloodline and bite force. Champagne? A server materialized beside her, silver tray extended. No, thank you. Her voice emerged steadier than she felt. The burning intensified, crawling up her forearm like invisible flames. She'd researched this mark her entire life, the crescent moon bisected by 3 stars. But every text, every elder, every whispered legend led to dead ends or dangerous warnings to stop asking questions. Some truths are better left buried, her grandmother had said before she died, especially ones written in your skin. The crowd shifted. A ripple of awareness moved through the ballroom like wind through wheat, bending everyone's attention toward the grand staircase. Alara felt it too, a pull in her chest, primal and undeniable, as though invisible threads connected her to something she couldn't see. Then she saw him. Alpha King Rydian Blackthorn descended the stairs with the casual grace of an apex predator who'd never known fear. Dark hair, darker eyes, a face carved from moonlight and shadows. Power radiated from him in waves that made the air itself feel heavy, charged with electricity that raised the fine hairs on her arms. Their eyes met across 50 feet of polished marble. The mark on her wrist exploded with white-hot agony. Alara gasped, doubling over as pain lanced through her entire arm. The champagne glass someone had pressed into her hand shattered against the floor. Conversations died. 100 faces turned toward her like flowers seeking sun, but she only saw one. Rydian Blackthorn had frozen mid-step, his expression transformed from regal boredom to something raw and wild. His hand moved to his own wrist, pressing against what she suddenly understood with terrible clarity must be an identical mark. Impossible, he breathed, and though he stood so far away, she heard him perfectly. Because fate, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor. The Omega nobody wanted, and the Alpha King nobody could have were bound by marks older than memory itself. What happens when destiny chooses the wrong people? Keep reading to discover the secret that could shatter a kingdom or save it. When Worlds Collide. The ballroom had gone silent as a tomb. Alara struggled to breathe through the fire consuming her wrist, each pulse of pain syncing perfectly with her racing heartbeat. Around her, the werewolf elite whispered behind jeweled hands, their eyes sharp with curiosity and calculation. She'd wanted to slip through this world unnoticed. Instead, she'd become its center. Rydian Blackthorn moved through the frozen crowd like a knife through silk. Everyone parted for him, some with reverence, others with fear. His beta, a severe woman with silver-threaded hair, reached for his arm, but he shook her off without breaking stride. Your Majesty, perhaps we should... The beta began. Leave us. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Then he stood before Alara, so close she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes, smell cedar and night-blooming jasmine on his skin. Up close, he was devastating, beautiful in the way storms were beautiful, deadly and impossible to look away from. Show me. Not a request. Kings didn't make requests. Her hand trembled as she extended her wrist. The mark blazed crimson now, the crescent moon and stars seeming to move beneath her skin. Rydian's fingers brushed her pulse point, and the touch sent electricity sparking up her arm, different from the burning. This was liquid heat that pooled low in her belly. He inhaled sharply. By the moon. With deliberate movements, he pushed back his own sleeve. An identical mark burned on his wrist, the mirror image of hers. When he brought it close to hers, both marks flared brilliant white, and Alara felt something snap into place inside her chest. A bond she'd never known was missing, suddenly and terrifyingly present. "Do you know what this means?" His voice had gone rough, barely controlled. "No." The word came out as a whisper. "I've searched my whole life. Nobody would tell me." His jaw tightened. Around them, the whispers grew louder, more frantic. She caught fragments. "Fated mate bond. But she's nobody." The prophecy said, "Everyone out." Rydian's command cracked like a whip. "Now." The ballroom emptied with remarkable speed. Within minutes, only his beta remained, standing at a respectful distance by the doors. Rydian pulled Alara toward a private alcove behind velvet curtains, away from the windows where curious eyes might linger. "Listen carefully," he said, his hands gripping her shoulders. "Whatever you think you know about mate bonds, forget it. This mark, our marks, they're not standard. They're ancient. They mean something that hasn't happened in 300 years. What do they mean?" His eyes searched hers, and she saw conflict warring in their depths, desire and duty, want and responsibility. "They mean you're my true mate, the one the moon goddess herself chose, the bond that can't be broken or rejected without destroying us both." Her knees went weak. True mates were legend, stories told to pups at bedtime. They weren't supposed to be real, but there's something you need to understand. He released her, stepping back as if proximity made thinking impossible. "I'm already engaged." The words hit like a physical blow. "Lady Seraphine Blackwood. The alliance marriage was arranged when we were children. Breaking it would mean war with her pack, would destabilize the entire kingdom." His voice carried the weight of impossible choices. "And I can't." The alcove curtain ripped aside. A woman stood there, beautiful and cold as winter itself, her silver gown reflecting moonlight like armor. "Hello, darling," she purred to Rydian, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Aren't you going to introduce me to your little problem?" When destiny collides with duty, someone always gets hurt. But which sacrifice will prove too great to bear? The price of power. Lady Seraphine Blackwood moved like a predator circling prey, her ice-blue eyes cataloging every detail of Alara's borrowed dress, her unbound hair, her trembling hands. This was a woman who'd been groomed for queenship since birth, and she wore that certainty like a crown. "Seraphine." Rydian's tone held warning. "This isn't what it looks like." Seraphine laughed, the sound crystalline and cutting. "Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like. A true mate bond." She practically spat the words. "How inconvenient for you. For us." Alara found her voice, though it emerged shakier than she'd like. "I didn't ask for this. No one ever does, darling." Seraphine's gaze turned calculating. "But here you are, wearing a mark that makes you the most dangerous woman in this kingdom. Tell me, little Omega, do you have any idea what people would do to possess that kind of bond? What they'd pay? What they'd kill for?" The threat hung in the air between them. Enough. Rydian stepped between them, his presence a wall of protective fury. "You will not threaten her." "I'm not threatening her, beloved." Seraphine's smile never wavered. "I'm educating her." The moment word spreads about this bond, and it will spread, everyone saw that display, she becomes a target. Rival packs will try to kidnap her, use her against you. Political enemies will attempt to eliminate her to weaken you. And our allies? She tilted her head. They'll see her as the reason I'm cast aside, the reason our carefully constructed peace falls apart. Everything she said made horrifying sense. Alara had spent her life invisible, and now she'd become the center of a game she didn't understand, with stakes she couldn't fathom. There is a solution, Seraphine continued, addressing Rydian now. Reject the bond. Rejection would kill us both, he said flatly. Not if she accepts it willingly. If she chooses to sever the connection for the good of the kingdom. Seraphine's voice turned honey-sweet with poison. Surely a nobody Omega would understand her duty. Would see that one person's happiness means nothing compared to thousands of lives. Alara's chest tightened. She thought of her brother, fighting an illness that drained their savings. She thought of her grandmother's warnings, of all the ways she'd learned to make herself small and unimportant. Maybe that's all she was meant to be. Small, forgettable, disposable, for the greater good. No. Rydian's hand found hers, his fingers interlacing with shocking gentleness. I won't ask that of her. Then you're choosing to watch your kingdom burn. Seraphine's mask cracked, revealing raw fury beneath. Everything your father built, everything you've sworn to protect, gone. Because you can't control your base instincts. A knock at the door interrupted them. The silver-haired Beta entered, her expression grave. Your Majesty, we have a problem. News of the bond has already reached the Northern Pack. They're demanding an audience. She paused. And there's been an incident at the Thornwood residence. Alara's blood turned to ice. My brother. What happened to my brother? He's safe, for now. But there was an attempted break-in. Whoever it was, they were looking for information about your family, about the mark. The Beta's eyes held sympathy. They're using him as leverage. The room spun. This was her nightmare crystallizing, her secret destroying everything she'd tried to protect. Bring him here, Rydian ordered immediately. Full royal guard, and mobilize security protocols. I want eyes on every pack elder, every council member who might use this situation to advance their agenda. You're making it worse, Seraphine hissed. Every action you take binds her tighter to you, to us, to this mess. He turned to her, and for the first time, Alara saw the king beneath the man, cold, absolute, unyielding. She is my mate. That makes her mine to protect. If the kingdom can't accept that, then perhaps the kingdom needs to change. Seraphine's face went white. Without another word, she swept from the alcove, fury radiating from every step. Alone except for the discreet Beta, Rydian finally looked at Alara, really looked at her, seeing past the mark to the terrified woman beneath. I'm sorry, she whispered. I've ruined everything. No. His thumb traced circles on her wrist, soothing the burning that had finally begun to fade. You've simply revealed what was always broken. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is accepting a destiny you never wanted. But can love survive when the whole world stands against it? Truths buried deep. The royal safe house sat at the edge of Moonreach Forest, protected by wards older than the kingdom itself. Alara watched dawn break through reinforced windows while her brother slept in the next room, guarded by wolves who could kill with a thought. 24 hours ago, she'd been invisible. Now she lived in a gilded cage, her existence a political weapon she'd never asked to wield. Rydian had left before midnight, summoned to an emergency council session. He'd promised to return, but promises from kings meant little when crowns hung in the balance. You should eat something. The Beta, Marin, she'd finally shared her name, set a breakfast tray on the table. Starving yourself won't change anything. How did you handle it? Alara asked quietly. When you realized your whole life could shift in a heartbeat. Marin's expression softened with understanding. I was 15 when I manifested as a beta. My family had only ever produced omegas. The day I shifted, everything I thought I knew about my future disappeared. She poured tea with practiced grace. But I learned something important. We don't get to choose what we are, only what we do with it. What if what I am destroys people I care about? What if it saves them? Marin countered. That mark on your wrist, do you know why it's shaped like that? The crescent moon with 3 stars? Alara shook her head. It's the symbol of the first pack, the original werewolves who made the covenant with the moon goddess. Legend says she marked 13 pairs of mates, bonding them so deeply they became 2 halves of one soul. Those bonds could channel power that made kingdoms rise or fall. Marin's voice dropped to near whisper. When the last marked pair died 300 years ago, most believed the bloodline extinct. But it wasn't. Apparently not. Which means you carry blood from the first pack, and so does Rydian. The question is, why would the goddess wait 3 centuries to forge another bond? Before Alara could respond, her brother's voice called from the bedroom. Ellie? Where are we? She found Kai sitting up in bed, his thin face confused but no longer feverish. The royal physician had worked some kind of miracle. His color looked better than it had in months, his breathing easier. We're safe, she assured him, sitting on the bed's edge. How do you feel? Weird. Good weird. He studied her with eyes too old for his 12 years. You found him, didn't you? The person Gran said would come. Alara's breath caught. What? Before she died, Gran told me a secret. She made me promise not to tell until you met someone who made your mark burn. Kai's small hand found hers. She said our family has been waiting for centuries, protecting something that could change everything. And when the mark awakened, I was supposed to give you this. He pulled a folded letter from beneath his pillow, yellowed with age, sealed with wax bearing the crescent moon symbol. Alara's hands trembled as she broke the seal. Her grandmother's distinctive handwriting filled the page. My dearest Alara, if you're reading this, the bond has manifested, and your world has turned upside down. I wish I could have prepared you better, but some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud. You are not cursed. You are not a mistake. You are the last daughter of the Thornwood line, descendants of Lyanna Thornwood, one of the original 13 marked by the goddess herself. 300 years ago, a betrayal nearly destroyed our kind. The marked pairs were hunted, slaughtered by those who feared their power. Only 2 survived. Lyanna, who went into hiding, and Malachi Blackthorn, who founded the royal line. The goddess made a promise then. When the kingdom needed salvation most, she would forge one final bond between their bloodlines. A bond that could heal what was broken, or finish what the betrayers started. Trust your mate, darling girl. Trust the bond. And whatever you do, don't let them discover the real reason the marks exist. The power isn't in the bond itself. It's in what you can unlock together. Love, always. Alara read the letter 3 times, each pass revealing new layers of impossibility. She'd spent her life believing herself powerless, insignificant. Instead, she was a key to something ancient and terrifying. What does it say? Kai asked. Before she could answer, raised voices echoed from the main room. Rydian's voice, rough with fury, cut through the walls. Don't care what the council says. I will not. You have no choice. Another voice, male and authoritative. Lady Seraphine's father has invoked the blood oath. If you don't proceed with the wedding within the week, he'll consider it an act of war. Alara moved to the doorway, letter clutched in her fist. Through the crack, she saw Rydian facing down 3 older wolves, council members judging by their formal robes. There are laws, one elder said coldly, ancient laws that supersede even true mate bonds, laws that protect political alliances made in good faith. Laws written by wolves who feared true power, Rydian snarled. Laws designed to keep control centralized, to prevent bonds that might challenge the established order. Spoken like a king who'd throw away his kingdom for an Omega with pretty eyes, the elder sneered. The air itself seemed to crackle. Rydian's eyes flashed gold, wolf rising to the surface. Careful, Counselor Thorn. You're very close to learning why my family has held power for 300 years. We know exactly why. The elder's smile turned vicious. We also know what that mark really means. And we know that if certain information became public, information about what happened to the first pack, neither you nor your little mate would survive the week. Everything clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The council knew. They knew about the betrayal, about what truly destroyed the marked pairs, and they were willing to use that knowledge as a weapon. Elara pushed through the door, her grandmother's letter extended like a shield. Then perhaps, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, it's time everyone learned the truth. Some secrets are kept to protect the innocent. Others are kept to protect the guilty. But when the past demands justice, will the truth set them free or condemn them all? The reckoning. The council chamber felt like a courtroom designed by wolves who'd forgotten they were once human. Ancient stone walls pressed close, carved with the names of every pack leader who'd sworn loyalty to the Blackthorn line. 300 years of tradition, of carefully maintained order, all built on a lie Elara was about to expose. Rydian stood beside her, his presence a wall of barely controlled fury. Around the circular table, 12 council members watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to cold calculation. Counselor Thorn sat directly opposite, his silver hair and distinguished face masking something poisonous beneath. You requested this audience, Thorn said smoothly. The council has graciously agreed, though I'll remind you that Omegas without pack standing have no legal right to address. She has every right. Rydian's voice could have cut diamond. She's my true mate, which makes her your future queen, whether you like it or not. Murmurs rippled around the table. About that, another elder, Counselor Vex, interjected. The engagement to Lady Seraphine remains legally binding. The blood oath was sworn under false pretenses, Elara interrupted, her grandmother's letter trembling slightly in her hands. Because the council has spent 3 centuries hiding the real reason the marked bonds were destroyed. Silence, sharp and dangerous. Careful, child, Thorn said softly. Accusations against the council carry severe consequences. Then perhaps you should have thought about consequences before orchestrating genocide. She unfolded the letter, her voice gaining strength with each word. My grandmother, Elara Thornwood, was the keeper of our family's true history. We're descended from Lyanna Thornwood, one of the original 13 marked by the moon goddess. And 300 years ago, your predecessors murdered nearly all of them. That's a lie, Vex snarled, but his face had gone pale. Is it? Rydian pulled a leather-bound journal from his jacket. Ancient, its pages yellowed with age. This is Malachi Blackthorn's personal diary, locked in the royal vault since his death. I spent last night reading it. Would you like to know what he wrote about the night the marked pairs were slaughtered? The chamber had gone deathly quiet. Rydian's voice filled the space, reading words written in blood and grief. The council came for us at moonrise, silver chains blessed by traitor priests. They said we were too powerful, that mates who could channel the goddess's gift threatened the natural order. They said equality of power between alphas, betas, and omegas would destroy pack hierarchy, so they chose hierarchy over humanity, and they bathed their hands in my brother's blood. He was mad with grief, Thorn began. He was the only survivor because he was Alpha King, too valuable to kill outright. Rydian continued, his eyes blazing gold. They gave him a choice. Cooperate with the new order, help them suppress any future marked pairs, or watch them finish what they started. So he agreed. He built a kingdom on the graves of his friends, and spent the rest of his life ensuring no one would ever know the truth. Alara stepped forward, her fear transmuting into righteous anger. The marked bonds didn't threaten stability. They threatened control. Because mates bonded by the goddess herself couldn't be manipulated, couldn't be forced into political marriages, couldn't be used as chess pieces in your power games. And the goddess promised Lyanna Thornwood one thing before she went into hiding, Rydian added, his hand finding Alara's. That when the corruption became too great, when the council's fear of true equality threatened to tear the kingdom apart, she would forge one final bond. A bond that could either heal what was broken or burn it all down and start again. The implications hung like a blade over all their heads. Counselor Thorn rose slowly, his carefully maintained facade cracking. You have no proof. Ancient ravings and family legends mean nothing against 300 years of law. Then perhaps this will convince you. Marin entered through the side door, carrying a silver box etched with protective runes. This was sealed by Malachi himself, with instructions that it be opened only by his true mate descendant. She set it before Alara. Your blood is the key. Alara pressed her marked wrist against the box's lock. It clicked open, revealing 13 silver pendants, each one bearing the crescent moon and stars, each one engraved with names. She lifted one, Lyanna Thornwood and Malachi Blackthorn. The council wanted them destroyed, Marin said quietly, but Malachi saved them. Each pendant was blessed by the goddess herself, a fragment of her power granted to the marked pairs. Together, they could heal entire packs, end wars with a thought, channel power that made territory disputes and political alliances meaningless. And separately, another council member whispered, horror dawning in their eyes. Separately, they're just pretty jewelry, Alara said. But with a true mate bond to channel through? She felt the pendant warm in her palm, responding to the mark on her wrist. We could restore what was lost. Give power back to the goddess's chosen, not just the council's chosen. Revolution, Thorn breathed. You're talking about revolution. I'm talking about justice, Rydian corrected. The council has had 3 centuries to prove they could govern fairly. Instead, you've created a system where omegas are treated as property, where political marriages trump true bonds, where fear of change matters more than the will of the goddess herself. And you think you can change that? Vex sneered. One marked pair against centuries of tradition? No, Alara said softly. But 13 pendants, blessed by the moon goddess, channeled through a bond she forged herself. She met each council member's eyes in turn. That might be enough to remind everyone who really holds the power here. The pendant flared bright as moonlight, and Alara felt it, a pulse of pure energy that connected her to Rydian, to the mark, to something vast and ancient that had been sleeping for 300 years. Around the table, several council members fell to their knees, their wolves recognizing what their human sides refused to accept. Divine authority, goddess chosen, undeniable. You have a choice, Rydian said into the stunned silence. Accept that change is coming. Help us rebuild a kingdom based on true bonds and goddess-blessed power. Or, his voice went cold as winter. Stand against us and learn what happens when you fight against destiny itself. Thorn's face had gone purple with rage, but another council member, younger, less entrenched in old ways, slowly stood. I vote to recognize the true mate bond, she said clearly, and to dissolve the engagement to Lady Seraphine on grounds of divine intervention. Seconded, another voice called. This is treason, Thorn began. This is survival, the younger counselor interrupted. I've seen what happens when we ignore the goddess's will. I won't watch this kingdom tear itself apart because we're too stubborn to accept that maybe, just maybe, the old ways need to die. One by one, other voices joined hers. Not all of them. Thorn and two others sat rigid with refusal. But enough. Enough to shift the balance. Enough to change everything. When the old order crumbles, only the brave survive to build something new. But will their victory cost more than they ever imagined? The dawn of something new. 3 weeks later, Alara stood in the royal gardens where flowers bloomed in defiance of autumn's chill. The mark on her wrist had settled into a gentle warmth, a constant reminder of the bond that hummed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. Change, she'd learned, came neither quickly nor easily, but it came nonetheless, relentless as the tide. The council had fractured. Thorn and his loyalists had retreated to their territories, spreading poison about the Omega Queen and her dangerous ideas, but more had stayed, choosing adaptation over extinction. Laws were being rewritten. The Blood Oath system was under review, and for the first time in centuries, Omegas were being appointed to positions of real power. You're thinking too loud. Rydian's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. I can practically hear the worry. She leaned into his warmth. Seraphine's pack hasn't responded to the alliance offer. The northern territories are still threatening succession, and Kai's doctor says he needs another treatment next month that we can't afford even with Alara. He turned her to face him, his dark eyes soft with affection that still made her breath catch. The Blackwood pack will come around. They're posturing, but they won't risk open war. The northern territories always threaten succession. It's practically their love language. And Kai's treatment is covered by the royal treasury. You know this. I know, she sighed. I just keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For someone to realize I'm just an Omega from a forgotten bloodline who has no idea how to be queen. Good. His thumb traced her jaw with devastating gentleness. Queens who think they know everything make terrible mistakes. Queens who question themselves, who listen, who care more about their people than their pride. He kissed her forehead. Those are the ones who change the world. When did you become a philosopher? About 3 weeks ago, when a stubborn Omega crashed my gala and turned my entire existence upside down. His smile held wonder and heat in equal measure. Best thing that ever happened to me. Before she could respond, Marin appeared on the garden path, her expression carefully neutral in the way that meant something complicated had happened. Your Majesties, Lady Seraphine is here. She's requested a private audience. Alara felt Rydian tense, but she squeezed his hand. Let her in. Seraphine approached like winter personified, beautiful, cold, lethal in silver silk that matched her ice-blonde hair. But something had shifted in her bearing. The predatory confidence had been replaced by something harder to read. I'll be brief, she said without preamble. My father has accepted the dissolution of our engagement. He's negotiating a trade alliance instead, less romantic, more profitable. Seraphine, Rydian began. Let me finish. Her eyes met Alara's, and for the first time there was no hatred there. Just exhaustion. I spent my entire life preparing to be your queen. Learning to rule, to manipulate, to sacrifice everything for power and position. And then you appeared, with your marked wrist and your impossible bond, and I hated you for it. I understand, Alara said quietly. No, you don't. But you will. Seraphine's smile turned bitter. Because I've spent the last 3 weeks watching you navigate council politics and territory disputes and assassination attempts. Yes, there have been 2 you don't know about because your mate's security is better than you think. And I've realized something. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something almost vulnerable. I never wanted to be queen because I loved Rydian. I wanted it because I loved power. But you? She gestured between them. You're both terrified and you're doing it anyway. You're changing laws that have stood for centuries because they're wrong, not because it's politically advantageous. And that kind of courage? She laughed softly. I could never have that. What are you saying? Rydian asked carefully. I'm saying the kingdom needs you more than it needs me. Seraphine pulled a leather folder from her bag. These are the names of every council member who took bribes from Thorn, every pack leader who's plotting against your reforms, every threat I know about because my family has spent generations collecting secrets. Alara took the folder with trembling hands. Why? Because I'm tired of being part of a system that values bloodline over integrity. Because watching you two fight for each other, for the kingdom, for something real, it made me realize I've never fought for anything except my own advancement. Seraphine's mask finally cracked, revealing raw honesty beneath. And because maybe, just maybe, if you succeed, girls like me won't have to choose between love and power anymore. Maybe we can have both. She turned to leave, then paused. Also, you should know, Counselor Thorn is planning something for the coronation ceremony next week. I don't know what, but he's been meeting with dark practitioners. Watch your backs. Then she was gone, leaving only the scent of frost and possibility. Rydian pulled Alara close, his heart beating steadily against her cheek. We're going to have enemies our whole lives, aren't we? Probably, she admitted. But we'll face them together. Together. He tilted her face up, his kiss gentle and claiming all at once. I love you, Alara Thornwood, my mate, my queen, my impossible miracle. I love you too, she whispered against his lips, even though you're arrogant and stubborn and you snore. I do not snore. You absolutely snore. Kai heard you from 3 rooms away. Their laughter echoed through the garden, light and genuine and entirely at odds with the weight of crowns they'd soon wear. But that was the thing about true bonds. Alara was learning. They didn't make life easier. They just made it worth fighting for. That night, as moonlight streamed through their bedroom windows, she traced the mark on his wrist and felt the pendant's power hum beneath her skin. 13 pairs, the goddess had marked. 12 had fallen. But one remained, not as warriors or rulers, but as something more fundamental. Hope. The kingdom would resist. Enemies would strike. The old guard would fight tooth and claw against the future. But change had already begun, written in the marks on their skin, and the bond that couldn't be broken. And when the sun rose on their coronation day, despite Thorn's sabotage attempt, despite the protests and threats, Alara Thornwood would become queen, not because of her bloodline or her politics or her power, but because the moon goddess herself had looked down at a broken kingdom and chosen an Omega nobody and an Alpha king to heal it. Together. Always together. The end. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about finding your perfect match. They're about becoming worthy of the match you've found. May you fight for love as fiercely as Alara and Rydian fought for their kingdom.